Take a look at what all of these Tottenham managers have said.
I'm very sad, I'm very angry, I'm everything. Where is the goal of this club?
What's his objective? What's the club's objective? I mean, at the start of the year, they sort of said compete on all fronts. Well, the club hasn't competed on all fronts for a very long time.
Tottenham story is this: 20 years that there is the owner and never won something. But why? Only for the fault is only for the club or for every manager that stay here? And I have seen the manager that Tottenham had on the bench.
I hope the Tottenham fans don't get me wrong, but the only club in my career where I don't have still a deep feeling is Tottenham.
Tottenham feels like a club chasing balance sheets, not trophies. From a business perspective, Spurs might be one of the best run teams in Europe. A real revenue machine with a world-class stadium that looks incredible. It's even been used for NFL events. That's right, hand egg. But somehow it feels like it has zero soul, especially when you think about the footballing side.
Typical Tottenham performance. They obviously will let you down most times.
In a competitive football city like London, that pressure hits even harder because other clubs are doing bigger things. Though Spurs did win a European title before the Gunners.
Edison invented.
Tottenham look like trendsetters in the business world, but not in football. I mean, they have set one trend in football.
But Tottenham is the history of the Tottenham.
For years, the direction fell shaped by Daniel Levy, a guy who was a businessman, not a dreamer. And even though he's no longer the executive chairman, that mindset still lingers. The club keeps turning profits. They make a lot of money, but the team feels lost. They're stuck once again in a managerial carousel with no clear style. No identity, no real legacy to lean on.
No, I think when they hired Igor Tudor, what do you think his objective was? Survival in the Premier League. That's just the reality.
They finally won a trophy, yet now they look worse than ever before domestically.
Out of all that bottom pack there, Tottenham are the one team where I can say they do not look like a team that can get results or gonna get results in
And the big point.
They used to be the club that was always about being close but never enough. From Lucas Moura's miracle night that became the peak that they never surpassed, to Kane's wasted prime. They felt like a club that would never achieve anything. Then you add in the fact that they sacked Mourinho before a cup final, and then they fired the one guy who brought them a trophy, and you begin to question what Spurs' long-term ambitions really are. Ange in particular is a good situation, because there were a lot of Spurs fans that I think wanted him out, even after the incredible Europa League win. But it's a new season, and not only was his replacement fired, but Spurs are staring at the possibility of finishing in the bottom half for a second year in a row. I mean, they were so low on the table that there were talks of relegation. I'm actually really glad that Ange's tenure at Tottenham has aged well. He won them a trophy through an injury crisis, after putting his balls on the line and saying that he always wins in his second season.
I'll correct myself, I don't usually win things, I always win things in my second year.
Yet he still got sacked because Spurs wanted to compete on all fronts. Well, fast forward, and Spurs are still stuck in a relegation fight. They're still stuck in a situation where they are not competing on all fronts.
Today, watching this Tottenham side, they did not look hard to beat. If you're a Tottenham fan, I'll be very worried about getting relegated.
Now, I know I made a joke about Spurs winning silverware before Arsenal, but in reality, the difference between the two London clubs shows just how far away Spurs are from the top teams. Like, when they play Arsenal, they know the games are always going to be tough, but recently they've just bent over for the Gunners. Igor Tudor had only a few days with the team after stepping in as the interim coach, and he was trying to introduce his usual system while dealing with injuries, suspensions, and players not being fully fit.
You know, you can say Igor Tudor, he's only working with what he's got. I think on Friday he said he only had 13 players at training because of all these injuries.
Now, even with all of that, Tottenham actually started well and had a decent first half. The fans were loud, the energy felt good, and for a moment, it looked like the team might respond to the change. You know, the new manager bounce, plus the fact that Arsenal were recovering from dropping points against Wolves. But in the end, they lost 4-1 to their biggest rivals. Losing the North London derby on its own is hard to accept, but it's even harder to accept when it's happened twice in one season. Eze caused them problems again, which is always embarrassing, especially since Eze doesn't look that great against any other opposition, but against Spurs, he turns into prime Henry mixed with Ronaldinho. As that game went on, Spurs' weaknesses became so clear. Defensively, these guys are just non-existent.
This is certainly not a first choice defensive line. They've conceded 4 goals against Arsenal, and it's not likely to get much better between now and the end of the season.
Their midfield is more open than Bonnie Blue, and once Arsenal found their rhythm, Spurs just couldn't keep up. Tudor himself admitted after the match that there's a big gap between the two sides, and that the players he has are clearly very low on confidence.
Big gap in psychophysic moment between two teams. It was too much Arsenal for us in this moment with the problems we have. Also, nice to understand where we are.
Now, there were a few small positives. Randall Colomwani, for example, looked very sharp and even scored. And the connection between the fans and the team did feel stronger than it did under Thomas Frank. But the bigger picture with this club is so worrying. They've struggled badly at home all season. Their squad still feels disconnected. And the new manager has a job to do in stabilizing things. The team is sitting close to the relegation zone. The pressure is already massive. Of course, it's funny and classic Spurs that while they were struggling in the league, they were doing very good in the Champions League. The thing with Tottenham is you can't even get excited about their talented players, because for years they had world-class players, but they didn't do anything with it. Back in the early 2010s, for example, Tottenham were not lacking in talent. In fact, that period shows exactly why Spurs fans still feel frustrated today, because the quality was there. They just never fully built around it the right way. Harry Redknapp came in as the manager and brought some much-needed stability to the club. After years of inconsistency, Spurs finally looked organized and dangerous again, with players like Gareth Bale, Luka Modric, Jermaine Defoe, Danny Rose, and Kyle Walker. The team started to look like a proper top-level side instead of just another club fighting for relevance in London. That era brought a huge milestone. Tottenham secured a Champions League spot for the first time in the Premier League era, which again at the time and still today is massive. It showed real progress and made people believe Spurs were finally stepping into that elite level of English football. One of the most memorable moments from that time came from when they beat Arsenal, getting a win over them in the league for the first time in over 10 years, with Danny Rose scoring in a 2-1 win. The goal, of course, was very important for the results on the pitch, but it also symbolized a shift in mentality. Spurs finally felt like they could compete with their biggest rivals. Then during that period, they of course had Gareth Bale. Watching Bale for those years, it was a joy. You were seeing a player evolve in real time. He started as this promising young talent at left back, but by his last few seasons at Tottenham, he was one of the best players in the world. There were times where he legit looked like left-footed Cristiano Ronaldo. His combination of speed, strength, and skill, it was just crazy. Even today, it's hard to think of many players in the Premier League who had that exact mix. He was carrying the Spurs side on his back, especially if you look at that 2012-2013 season. And that's exactly what Florentino Perez saw. Real Madrid saw him as Ronaldo's regent. Every time he got the ball, you felt like something crazy would happen. But even with Bale's rise and the overall quality in the squad improving, Spurs never really pushed through to that next level. They hovered around the top 4, but never made that final leap into being consistent title contenders. And then of course came one of their biggest problems that would define Tottenham for years: consistently selling their best players without properly rebuilding. You had Luka Modric, who left for Real Madrid, and then Gareth Bale followed for around £86 million, which again, great fees, fantastic profits, and on paper that kind of money should have transformed the squad. Instead, it became a symbol of wasted potential. The Bale money was not spent wisely at all. Some of the players did well. Eriksen ended up being a fantastic signing. Chadley had moments, but there were few real successes from that spending spree. Things just didn't really work out. Like yes, Lamela had some great performances and some Tottenham fans might really like him, but from the outside, besides that Rabona goal, what did he really do? Then you have a guy like Paulinho, whose name never comes up when we talk about successful Spurs signing. Like maybe some of you Tottenham fans will come at me in the comments saying that a lot of these players actually had great moments, but for a club to spend that much money and still not improve the overall level of the team, it's impressively bad. Moves like that slowly damaged Spurs' reputation across the footballing world. They had the resources, they had the momentum, but they couldn't turn it into long-term growth on the pitch. Trying to reset that direction, Levy brought in Mauricio Pochettino in 2014. Now Pochettino had done excellent work at Southampton and had built a reputation for developing young players while playing exciting football. He felt like the right kind of manager for Tottenham, someone who could grow with the squad instead of chasing quick fixes. And almost immediately you could see the change. Their football became more energetic, more aggressive, more modern. Poch created a culture that allowed players to improve, and they got better week to week instead of just trying to survive. Under him, recruitment improved and the academy players got real opportunities. Like Harry Kane had always been around the squad, but it was Pochettino that turned him into a starter. He went from being labeled a one-season wonder to scoring 20 plus, 30 plus goals a season like it was nothing.
The greatest one-season season wonder in Premier League history.
I mean, I don't think people still to this day understand how good Harry Kane was. The guy won the Golden Boot and Playmaker of the Season while playing for one of the worst Spurs teams I've ever seen. Then around him you had players like Dele Alli, Eric Dyer, and Heung-min Son. All of them helped transform Tottenham into one of the most exciting teams to watch in the league. The club finally looked like it was signing the right profiles, players who actually fit the system and had the room to grow. Their improvement was fast. They finished 6th the season before Pochettino arrived, moved up to 5th in his first year, and by his 3rd year, they were finishing 2nd, their highest league finish since winning the title back in 1961. For a moment, it felt like Spurs were genuinely building something special. I mean, go back and watch a young Dele Alli. He was Jude Bellingham before Bellingham. He was special. You had him playing behind Harry Kane, and then you had Son, Eriksen. Their attack was so fluid and fun to watch. And it wasn't just the attackers. Kyle Walker and Danny Rose were flying forward. They gave Spurs whip and energy. It was proper football, not what you're seeing from Arsenal right now. In midfield, you had Moussa Dembele, who everybody on any podcast continues to glaze on, but it's for good reason.
In my opinion, Dembele.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he's very good. His feet are unbelievable.
He seems to sort of like glide past people.
Yeah,
It doesn't look like he's running fast. He just
because
sort of
he's so big as well. He just shifts his body so.
If there was somebody I'd pay to watch, it'd be Moussa Dembele.
That's exactly what Dele Alli said.
No, just how he plays the game. He makes it look so easy.
Moussa Dembele.
Everyone says that.
Yeah.
Everyone says that. Every Tottenham teammates I do, everyone says Moussa Dembele.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone will give you a different answer, to be honest. Just he's sort of a freak of nature. I mean, he's a monster.
He was incredible. A true box-to-box midfielder who could carry the ball through pressure and control games both physically and with his technical ability.
For me, I put him in next to Ronaldinho, Maradona, Okocha.
Behind them, you had the center-back partnership of Toby Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen. They were strong and reliable. And then behind them, Hugo Lloris, the captain of the French national team. Everything about that team suggested a bright future. Even Levy seemed to be investing for the long term, as Spurs prepared to leave White Hart Lane and build their new state-of-the-art stadium. Again, on paper, and frankly on the pitch, it looked like Tottenham were setting themselves up to become a modern powerhouse. They had a strong squad, they had a respected manager, and they had world-class infrastructure coming. And it looked like they were all going to combine together at the same time. But that's when things start to shift again. The focus on building the new stadium began to affect the investments on the pitch. So while other clubs strengthened their squads, Spurs slowed down. I mean, the most shocking moment came in the summer of 2018 when Tottenham became the first Premier League club ever to go an entire transfer window without signing a single player.
History. Let's make history together, Daniel. Let's not sign anybody.
That's right. They didn't sign a single person. And keep in mind, this happened after they had just finished 3rd in the league. So instead of building on momentum, they just didn't do anything. For everybody involved, that decision felt crazy. When you're that close to competing at the top, that's the moment you invest and push forward. That's not the time to freeze spending. So of course, naturally, the lack of reinforcement caught up with them. Players who had carried the team for years started to look tired. They didn't have enough depth, and the identity that Pochettino had built began to fade. Now, despite signing no one, and injuries to Kane, Son, and Dele Alli, Spurs still somehow played well. They had Fernando Llorente stepping up and scoring big goals as Tottenham finished 4th in the league. They even somehow made it to the Champions League final that year, despite barely making it out of the groups. That entire run was a fantastic story and kind of classic Spurs. From beating Manchester City to the miracle against Ajax, Tottenham had beaten all odds, but then they got to the final and lost. Even with all the progress under Pochettino and the new stadium on the way and the rise of players like Heung-min Son and Harry Kane, Tottenham still had nothing real to show for it in terms of trophies. And that's the part that still frustrates fans the most. Tottenham had turned themselves into a club that could consistently fight for Champions League spots. But when it came to silverware, it was non-existent. They looked like a team that was almost there, but could never quite finish the job, like your uncle and erectile dysfunction. There was still some optimism though, especially after that run to the Champions League final. I mean, reaching the final of that competition without investing in the squad the previous summer felt impressive. Almost like Pochettino had squeezed every last bit of quality out of that group. Many people thought that was the moment that Tottenham could finally push forward, invest properly, and build on that momentum. It even looked like Levy had learned from his past mistakes too, because that summer Spurs spent really big. They broke their transfer record to sign Tanguy and Ndombele, brought in Ryan Sessegnon, and added Giovanni Lo Celso. It looked like the squad was finally getting refreshed. But football moves fast, and just 12 games into the new season, everything fell apart. After a rough start, Pochettino was sacked. For many fans, it felt harsh. This was the same manager who had taken them to their highest league finish in decades and to a Champions League final with minimal backing. Letting him go so quickly felt like the club lost patience at the worst possible time. And when you look back at that era, that perfectly sums up Tottenham's story. They had incredible talent, even before Pochettino came in, but they never truly built the structure around that talent to turn success into trophies. Every time they got close, they held themselves back. Whether it was poor transfer decisions, selling key players at the wrong time, or choosing infrastructure over squad investment, they were never able to jump to that next level. The one time the whole squad was good under Pochettino, the club decided to not take a risk to build a proper team around them, which is why that Ange quote about Spurs is so funny.
You know, when you walk into Tottenham, what you see everywhere is to dare is to do. It's everywhere. And yet, their actions are almost the antithesis of it.
This is also why Spurs fans still talk about that period with mixed emotions. On one hand, the football was exciting and full of promise. On the other hand, it always felt like the club stopped just short of taking the final step. They had the players, they had the moments, the momentum, but they never fully committed to building a lasting winning project around them. And that's why Tottenham's story always feels like a cycle rather than a rise. The talent appears, you get hope, and then the club fails to build properly around it before starting it all over again. And the worst part is they don't even have an identity, because after always finishing second like your local hooker, Spurs decided to go out and get a manager to help them become winners. So they hired Jose Mourinho. On paper, it never really made sense. You had an owner who was known for being frugal and business focused, bringing in a manager famous for his win now mentality and demands of spending. So it came as no surprise that the styles clashed from day one. Mourinho wanted immediate success, while Tottenham's structure was built on long-term control and cautious spending. Unsurprisingly, Mourinho didn't last long. The results were inconsistent, and the football became more defensive, which didn't sit well with the fans who had grown used to Pochettino's energetic style.
It's more that you're thinking, how are they going to score a goal? How are they going to win the game?
Then the strangest moment came when Mourinho was fired right before the Cup final. That decision really reinforced the stereotype that Tottenham lacked a true winning mentality. I mean, you could have let the guy manage one more game. He could have delivered you a trophy.
We don't do that here.
But obviously, Levy didn't want Mourinho to win something. He didn't want the narrative changed. I thought it was funny, according to reports from the Telegraph, Levy actually believed sacking Mourinho could give the squad a psychological boost ahead of the final, but I feel like that was more PR than reality. Now, many people thought that Levy learned from his mistakes after hiring Ange Postecoglou, because after Mourinho, he still went with a defensive coach in Antonio Conte, and once again, it didn't work out. But Ange arrived with a strong reputation after his success at Celtic, and from the very get-go, he gave Spurs something they had been missing for years: a clear identity.
It's just who we are, mate. It's just who we are. It's who we're going to be till as long as I'm here.
Like, not only were they getting results in his first season, but you could see the way that he wanted his team to play. That's why he won Manager of the Month for August, and Tottenham were fun to watch again. I mean, Ange ball was high-tempo, attacking, brave. It was a complete reset from the negative energy that had surrounded the club during Antonio Conte's time.
They lost confidence, they lost spirit, they lost to be a team.
Unfortunately for Ange though, he was done after 2 seasons. It's harsh because some people will say that his domestic form was inexcusable, but the guy won them a title, and the football his team played in that first season was so promising. Add in the fact that his replacement didn't improve the team at all, and you start to wonder if sacking him was a mistake. When you look at these periods all together, it shows you Tottenham's biggest problem. The club has never been short of incredible players. They've had talented managers. They've developed players into world-class players. They reached a Champions League final. But every time they've looked ready to take that next step, they've done something that messed up their momentum.
I feel that was a fairly gutless performance.
I'll go further, Paul. It's the kind of performance that got Nuno sacked at Tottenham. The obvious, this isn't working, to this isn't going to work, is it?
It's the cycle that Spurs fans know all too well. That's why, despite the big names, despite the memorable moments, Tottenham's modern story still feels unfinished. They're a club that keeps getting close, but just not close enough. To see just how good this team was under Ange when they won the Europa League title, you have to watch this video right here.